Hi, good evening everybody. So tonight's tutorial is our ironing board cover. I'm going to be doing a small tabletop ironing board just to make it a bit shorter and snappier, but obviously the exact same principle applies when you are doing a full-size ironing board, and no ironing board is more desperate for a cover than ours. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do my little one, and then I'm going to try and choose some slightly more manly fabric for our ironing board at home. So you really don't need a lot of equipment for this. I've got an erasable pen and a ruler, but tailor's chalk or a tape measure will do. Anything just to draw on fabric. I like these because obviously they just disappear, but a friction pen or tailor's chalk or whatever, because ultimately you're not going to see the line that you draw, and scissors. So in terms of equipment, you will need, in terms of materials, you will need fabric that is sort of about 3 inches, so 6 inches wider and 6 inches taller than your fabric. The more you've got around the outside, then the more you've got a chance to play, because some people's ironing boards will be chunkier, so they might want to add a little bit more, and you also need a couple of meters of elastic. I've got 6mm elastic, so 6 to 12mm will be fine, or again if you're kind of rummaging around for stuff, cord is fine as well. Elastic's just great because it just pings on in and out, on and off, not in and out. If you wanted to add a little bit of padding to your ironing board and you have something like fusible fleece or thermal wadding, then they're okay. But if you've got standard wadding, then because it's if it's synthetic, it will just melt under the heat and it will just squish and compact, and therefore not really give you any padding. But thermal wadding is designed not to react the same to heat, obviously, if you're making oven gloves and things like that. And if you've got natural wadding, like 100% cotton stuff, that's fine as well, because obviously that doesn't react to heat in the same way. So for your fabric to cover the ironing board, you absolutely definitely need cotton. If you're going to use polycotton or something like that, the chances are you're going to scorch it or melt it. So cotton is definitely best. So as ever, I'm trying a little bit of a slightly different setup. So I've got a few different camera angles. Hopefully there'll be less chin shots, and hopefully no gut shots. So we'll see how that works. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw around my ironing board as a template. You probably look a bit bonkers at this stage. You might need to get on your floor or your dining room table to do it, quite a bit of space. But like I said, because I'm doing a smaller one, I can pop it on my tabletop. So here is my ironing board, and hopefully you'll be able to see that okay. So I'm adding 3 inches, or what's that, 7.5 centimetres, all the way around the perimeter of my ironing board. And I'm just going to use this, like I said, this erasable pen so that it just disappears nicely. So I'll try and keep my eyes on questions and just see if there's anything I can answer if I don't quite say things clearly enough, or you've just got questions in general about sewing or machines. So I'm going to be using a different machine tonight. I'm using one of my Sewing Bunny babies, my little Genomes that have been stuffed away for far too long, nearly a year now, collecting dust. So I'm just all the way around. And I've put some marks in at the top of my ironing board earlier, just so that I don't bore you all too much. And then I'm just going to join those pen marks up and create a nice defined line for me to follow with my scissors. So I've chosen this really bright, bold, sort of exotic bird toucan print because I absolutely love it. It's probably the least practical ironing board fabric, but who cares? It'll look nice and bright and exciting in the studio. Like I said, I think I'm going to have to go for something a bit more boring for Dan's ironing board, which is the one that I normally use for the tutorials. So I've got a nice line now, and I'm just going to cut that out. Lost noise here. So I'll take my ironing board off now. I'm just going to cut this out. So I've drawn on the wrong side of my fabric If you do draw on the front of your fabric by accident, then it really doesn't matter too much, because all of these lines are going to be tucked and concealed in your casing for your elastic or for your cord. So you might have noticed when my little board was on the table, it's quite a thin, use that hand, quite a thin board, so 3 inches is plenty. If you've got a really big chunky ironing board, you might want to add an extra inch onto that, just to make sure that it's going to cover and not sort of just slip and slide around. But when I grab my ironing board back, I will show you how to just use your tape measure, just to kind of give you a bit of confidence if you're wondering how much to add. So because I've got a little mini ironing board, this fits quite comfortably on ½ metre. So this transformation for me, for my ironing board, is £3.50. I think probably my standard ironing board would probably fit on ½ metre, but I just need it longer. So I need to choose a wider width print. So again, still a fairly inexpensive make. And if you've got your ironing board up all the time, or in your dining room, it's a bit more prominent. I mean, a nice little feature of it. So quite a bit of ironing involved. So I've got that ironing board shape now, and I'm going to do quite a bit of ironing. So I'm hoping here, can't see it yet, it's a terrible shot really for post-Christmas, and you can't really see my face, but hey. So all I'm going to do at first, they're definitely not good for all those, all that Christmas cake I was eating. I'll see if I can nudge myself back a little bit. So I'm going to be ironing, looking at the wrong side of the cover, and to create the casing I'm going to be turning back about 1.5 centimetres. Now my elastic is 6mm wide, so I'm not too concerned that's going to fit in there. If you've got 12mm elastic and it's a bit wider, then you might need to just be a bit more cautious to make sure you're definitely going to be able to fit that elastic in. So I'm going to turn it 1.5 centimetres and press. There is loads of ironing involved today, so expect probably quite a lot of waffling. So I'm going to iron all the way around, and then I'm going to repeat that process again. So we took all of those raw edges in. If you own an overlocker, you might choose to just overlock the outside edge and just do one turn for your channel. That's absolutely fine. So when you get to the corners and you've got this curved bit, obviously ironing accurately 1.5 centimetres is harder. But what I want to encourage you to do is just put little pleats in it. So just let the fabric where it wants to just fold back on itself. Remember, it's going to be gathered because the elastic's going to draw it in, and it's going to be sat under the inside of your ironing, or the underside of your ironing board. So these little pleats aren't going to be seen. Normally, obviously, the kind of thing that you'd avoid from your sewing projects. So it's just pleating over like that, but don't worry about it. It's perfectly normal to happen. You're not going to be able to get this flat. This is one of those great projects where actually it really doesn't matter what your sewing looks like, because nobody really is ever going to see it unless they inspect the underside of your ironing board. And no one's allowed around your house anyway at the moment, so nobody should be seeing that, let alone inspecting your ironing board. I've got a little bit of scrap fabric left over from this, well, quite a big piece actually. So I quite like the idea of making a pincushion and putting some magnets in the bottom of it to stick onto the ironing board. I love this little dish because it's got a magnet in it, but I constantly move it, so I would quite like another one, because I'm always finding when I'm ironing and I'm needing pins, I end up flicking them out and they go on the floor and then kind of get lost. So again, I'm getting to the curve bits. I'm just putting little pleats in where I feel like they need them, just to maintain that accurate casing. So I'm sorry about the sheer amount of ironing in this. Don't think there's very, very little ironing in next week's, I promise, just to make up for it. In fact, actually, that's maybe a little bit of a fib. There might be a bit of ironing, actually. Maybe not. Maybe everyone doesn't hate it as much as I do. I despise ironing. So just putting all those little pleats in, because I'm not worrying too much about how rough and ready it's looking. And then we're ready for round 2 in a minute to fold that casing over again. So make sure as you go in, if you're not measuring like I am, then make sure you don't go too narrow and your elastic doesn't fit through. So just keep your eye on that if you've got a wider width of elastic or maybe chunkier cord. But even if you really pushed and you just want to cover it, if you've got a ball of string, that would probably even do. It's probably just about strong enough probably to hold it all together. Got any questions? I put these stuck in. But yeah, lots of people. I think lots of people use the ironing board as a bit of a giant pincushion. What other questions are? When are the videos going to go on YouTube? Well, we started filming a couple of bits at the beginning of this week, and I've just set up some new angles in my studio here today. So it's going to be a bit of a working process, but I'm hoping soon, really. The sooner the better, really. I thought I might do a little bit of an introduction video first, just to welcome everyone into the studio. For anybody who hasn't seen it on Instagram or Facebook stories, put a bit of a post on yesterday. So I've folded that over, and now I'm going to go all the way back round and I'm going to fold it again, I'm sorry, just in case you I'd had enough of ironing. So this time I'm going to put some pins in because I want to make sure this stays in place. The end of the tutorial, I can see, Joy, you're asking about the draft excluder. I don't know what happened last week. It just cut me off. I think it had just had enough of everything, hadn't it? Facebook just... I feel like it well and truly let me down last week. So all you missed me doing was stuffing a little bit of my draft excluder with the scraps and showing you, recapping on it on a slip stitch. So there wasn't too much to be missed, but I don't think it recorded for anybody. I don't know what happened there, but it didn't record at my end. I was just blabbering away to myself, which is nothing new. So all the time I'm just pinning, especially in the pleats, just pinning them into place. So I'm maintaining the same distance, the same 1.5 centimetres, and just pressing it in. So I've got a double turned case there. So this isn't going to fray. It's going to last, stand the test of time, hopefully. So when I get to this bottom end, mine's a tabletop ironing board, so it doesn't have that slot to put your iron in. But if yours does, if you're using a full-size one, then what I would do is I would leave a gap, and I'll twizzle my ironing board around in a minute, around about where your iron holster, for the want of a better word, sits, and that's where we're going to leave our gap. So we'll leave our gap to adjust the elastic and feed the elastic in, but also it'll help to fit it on your ironing board as well. So it really is such a simple process as this. There just is quite a lot of fiddly ironing involved, which isn't the most fun, but there's not much else to be done in this weather, unfortunately, at the moment. So freshen up your iron cover is probably about as exciting as it's getting in January 2021. So that's the trickiest bits done now. Those bottom corners, obviously it's slightly curved at the top, but not quite as obvious. So you might choose not to really put too many pins in down the side, just the odd one or two, just to hold that fabric in place. And I'll keep trying to keep my eyes on questions. There's sometimes we just was up the screen a bit too fast for me. Love the Toucan fabric, Lorraine. It's absolutely amazing, is this? I just had to use it for something. I'm tempted to use the scraps. I bet they'll be enough actually for a little headband with a bow. It's sure a god save at this when you can't get to the hairdressers. If you've got any roots coming through, or you need to tame your locks. And just keep putting those little pleats in where you need them, just so you don't get too big or small of a casing. I'll keep trying to watch. Like me, Jane Barr. I was not thinking about you, honestly, I promise. Right. I'm nearly there, and I'll get to do a bit of sewing and then thread the elastic through. And I always have elastic disasters, so this will probably be probably one of those moments today. Although I've got a safety pin this time, which normally I'm scratching around for one, can't find one. Right, we're nearly there. It's a good job we only have to make these once in a blue moon, isn't it? So I'm just on that final side now. So we've literally got one line of stitching on this tonight, which is ace. And one style of stitch, we're just doing a straight line, almost. So it is a really pretty quick project once you've done that mammoth iron. So all ironed, got my corners in place. Like I said, they are probably not the neatest bit of pressing you've ever done, but it doesn't matter. So if you're going to put wadding on, Jeanette's just asked, you can either, what I would probably do is cut it to the size of your board, and rather than actually physically attach it, I would just have it kind of kept in with the pressure of your elastic, just a little bit like probably the foam you've got. So we've got a sheet of foam, and all ironing boards are different. This one is overlocked to the foam, so you could do it in that way before you start, or you could just keep it on. Another one that I was working with, the mini one, is just literally just kind of held in with pressure. So it's entirely up to you, depending on what you've got, what resources you've got. So I shall pop that there. Another lovely gut shot there. So I'm going to flip the camera, swizzle this round. There we go. Move my elastic. So this is my normal baby. And like I said, it's been collecting dust in the studio since March, sadly. So I'm just lining my machine up, and I want to stitch really quite close to this internal fold. If I come too close into that casing, I'm going to leave a really small channel, and it might not fit my safety pin or my elastic through, and also there's that temptation that fabric might flip back, and all that lovely pressing will be completely in vain. So I'm just going to adjust my needle position. So on this sewing machine, I've got it on straight stitching, and what I can do is I can move my needle. So if I'm not doing a zigzag stitch, then that setting there just affects where my needle position is. So I'm just going to reduce the number, and I don't know if you can slightly see my needles moving over. So I've got a nice guide to follow on the side of my foot, and I'm just putting my needle in a position that I feel easiest to follow. And I'm going to do 3 stitches forward, and then I want some really nice, take that pin out now, really nice reverse stitching because we're going to be really pulling on that elastic. So you might even want to double back it a little bit like we did last week with the draft excluder. And I'm just guiding it around that curve and still trying to maintain that nice close edge. So if you get to a point where this has been this is moved, because obviously we've created creases in it, if you just sort of tuck your fabric back and put a pin in it, remember creases are fine, so it'll just create a little crease, but then it'll keep the rest of your sewing nice and flat. Almost feels strange sewing on this machine. I think it's had too long on holiday. It's not happy with me, this machine tonight. Either that or I'm just so used to my brother. Nearly back to the beginning now. And then I'm just going to end with those 3 stitches into reverse and 3 stitches forwards again, nice and secure, so that it withstands all that pulling of the elastic. And that is the sewing part done. So trim those threads, move that back. Oh, nice chin shot of me again. So I'm going to remove all of my pins, and then I'm going to feed my elastic through the casing and then just fit it to the ironing board. And I'll show you what I mean about the kind of the holster for the actual iron itself. I'm missing questions here. I only have, would 9 or 3mm elastic, I only have a metre of 6mm. I would probably go with 9. I think 3 might be a bit too thin just to put the pressure on. You really make your ironing board cover really quite taut. So if it's a bit flimsy, then it might just ping, and there's nothing more annoying than that. So I've got a couple of meters of elastic. I know it's going to be too much, but it's better that way. And you really do stretch it quite tightly, so you might find you actually don't really use very much. So I've got 2 safety pins, one on the beginning and one on the end. And the safety pin that is on the end of my elastic, I'm just going to pin to the actual casing itself, and I'm going to use the other one to feed through, and literally just sort of shuffling the fabric onto the pin, and then once it gets full, I'm like pulling the casing and not the elastic and just guiding it all the way through. So the same you would do on a skirt or pyjamas or shorts, or threading cord into a bag or something like that, and just keep on going round all the way around. And if you have only got like a little bit left, if you've not got much elastic to play with, it's definitely good to do this, and then you don't lose the end of your elastic, because doing all this and then getting back to the beginning and realising you've no idea where the end of your elastic is really frustrating. And also if you let it ping, it's frustrating as well. God, I'm in love with this fabric. If they did this in jersey, it'd be dangerous. I'd be wearing it. Just keep on shuffling, and that's why it's really good just to make sure you did have a decent sized casing and not a really stingy skinny one, because then it becomes really, really hard to feed that pin through. So I'm at the top of my ironing board, so I've got halfway around, halfway to go. Quite a good time to keep my eye on questions. They might have all been answered by now. So things like the thermal wadding, there's loads of places, especially places that do patchwork, that will do those online. It is more expensive because obviously there's a bit more technology to it, and so is the natural wadding. We're hoping to get some natural wadding in, just trying to find it at the right price and the right width rather than little packs, but things like that will do a great job. But yeah, synthetic wadding, not a good idea, because it will just fuse and shrink and not really offer much protection. So I'm nearly back at the beginning. So I'll pop my pin out, and I'm just going to try and shuffle that fabric round so it looks less like a shower cap and a bit more like an ironing board cover. And I'm going to grab my board back. So my board is quite thin, so having 3 inches from this edge round was fine. If you find that you've got quite a deep ironing board, then what I would do is I would take the tape measure and I would measure from the top edge of your board, so the one that you're normally looking at, and I'd measure down your board and then around, and make sure that that 3 inches is going to be enough. If you think that's going to be a bit tight and it's going to be pulling a bit, then add that little bit extra on. But obviously it's worth measuring twice and cutting once. So pop this up. So I'm just going to pop my case on and keep hold of my elastic, my pin. Ooh. So once you've got it on, then you want to start pulling that elastic back. And quite often it's surprising how much, oh no, I've not let go. Whew. How much elastic actually comes back out of there. And when you're happy that it's really nice and taut, I'm just going to tie that in a big knot. So this is why you could use cord, because obviously it would do exactly the same job theoretically as elastic, but this just makes it a lot easier to ping on and off. So I'm going to cut my elastic down now. And I'm just going to put an extra little knot in there just to secure that that's not going to go anywhere. And then I've got my lovely covered ironing board. So that's the back of it with my ironing board cover on, and obviously I can adjust that. And there is my lovely ironing board cover. Love that. I do just want to wear it. I do that with fabric sometimes at the studio. Just hold it up with me, think about what I'd wear with it. So I hope that you like the idea of making something simple like that, and maybe with your scraps a little matching magnetic pincushion. I can't wait to see pictures. Please either tag us on Instagram or put them on the sharing page on Facebook. Next week's tutorial is the pennant, I think. I'm hoping I've not got this wrong. I have created a new event tonight just with all of the dates on, purely because of last week's hackers. So if you've not seen that already, if you follow them, I've put all the dates on from now until March, so you've got them kind of in your diary. Although I know nobody's going anywhere, we're not doing anything else, are we? But yeah, please tag away and enjoy your lovely shiny new ironing board covers.